So I just realized as I was standing over there, I just said, we'll be back in just a second with a great message, and it's my message. So I feel like that's a little bit arrogant, and I probably shouldn't have said it, but I'll just say it's a mediocre message that you're going to get right now. So set your standards there, and if I surpass them, then that's awesome and wonderful. So you're about to get a mediocre message talking about breathe. This idea of how do we rest, how do we get just take some time away and just kind of get away from the busyness. How do we breathe? And today we're going to talk about, Pastor Chris talked about last week, exhaling worry and inhaling worship, like getting rid of the worry and bringing the worship into your life. Today we're going to talk about exhaling panic and inhaling peace. Exhale panic and inhale peace. We have on our front door at our house, we have a wreath that hangs out there most of the year. It's just like it has a ribbon and it hangs just a big wreath. I don't know. It changes. My wife changes it. And she does that like for the seasons. So coming up in like July, it'll be like, American 4th of July-ish and that kind of thing. And sometimes, occasionally, it's not a wreath out there. It's like this little basket thing that has some flowers coming out of it. It's during the springtime. It has, like she puts this basket on there, and a couple years ago, that basket was hanging on our door in the springtime, and some really cute little bird decided that that's a great place to put a nest in those flowers. They're fake flowers, and the bird decided a great place to put a nest. So on our front door, we had a basket of flowers, and then a bird's nest, and then the bird laid some eggs in the nest. And so this was really cute and awesome and made for a great Instagram post, right? Like, we have bird eggs on our front door. But what it didn't do is make for it easy to use the front door. Because when there's a bird and eggs and all the nests going on the front door, every time you open the door, the bird flies away, and we feel like bad bird egg parents because we're making the bird fly. We're not parents, but we're making the bird fly away. We're scaring it. Maybe we're going to cause problems. So we tried not to use our door that much. But one particular evening, my wife needed to put something outside. So she opened the door. And as she opened the door, she kind of left it open for a minute. And the bird kind of flew away, but then decided it was going the wrong way, apparently, and flew back into the house. I was upstairs and just minding my own business in my room, and I heard what sounded like the neighbors being killed with rubber bands or something, like screaming like I have never heard in my life. Screaming this kind of scream that you're like, I have to get down there right now or something even worse than what caused that scream is going to happen. So I ran from my room downstairs to find my oldest daughter on the couch with a blanket over her head, screaming bloody murder. Like, literally screaming like I've never heard before because a bird was flying around our house. I wish we had cameras in our house that could have captured what happened after that, because me chasing that bird around with a towel, trying not to kill it because its babies were hanging on our door, this was quite a feat. And it would have been, I'm sure it would be viral and I'd be like a millionaire, but we don't have cameras, and so it didn't work out. But what I remember about that night is that scream. What I remember is sitting in the quiet and that scream that made me go, something is wrong. My daughter, although it was unwarranted and got a stern talking to from me later on, she panicked in that moment. That was her panic, just screaming, cover my head with a blanket because the bird may kill me, and scream so loud that everybody in the neighborhood, I'm surprised the police didn't show up at our house thinking someone was being murdered, because that's the kind of scream she gave. That was her panic. And today we're talking about exhale panic and inhale peace. And for us in the room, a lot of us think, I don't have that kind of panic. I'm not walking through every day screaming because of what's going on in my life. I'm not covering up with a blanket because I think I'm going to die from all of the stuff going on. But let me give you a little bit of a different definition of panic, and maybe this will help out in you feeling like this applies to you. Panic is fear, anxiety, and unrest that comes on suddenly and keeps us stuck. That's what panic is. Panic is fear, anxiety, and unrest that comes on suddenly and keeps us stuck. So when I describe panic in that way, can you relate? Do you have moments in your life when anxiety comes on quickly and keeps you stuck? Do you have moments when fear or unrest come on quickly and keep you stuck? Maybe it's fear about the future. What's going to happen next week, next month, next year? Maybe it's fear or anxiety about your job. Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to keep my job? Will I get this job? Maybe it's unrest about your marriage or relationships. I think this is all of us. I think every one of us has faced or is facing one of these things, or some of these things, all of them. Fear, anxiety, unrest, this overwhelmed feeling. That's what panic is. It comes on suddenly and it keeps us stuck. We're all in that kind of state. So as we talk about exhaling panic, that's what we're talking about. Exhaling those things. A few years ago, I was in Vegas with a couple of other pastors. 3 pastors and I went to Vegas. That's not the intro to a joke. 4 pastors go to Vegas. Like, sounds like it, right? 4 pastors walk into Vegas, and no, we went to Las Vegas because quite honestly, they have cheap hotel rooms at certain times of the year where you can stay at a really nice hotel for really cheap. And we went there for some time of brainstorming and planning and preparing for the next season that was coming. And so I was there with these 3 other pastors, and one of them knew of this place, and I had been there once before with him. He knew of this place where it was in a hotel lobby kind of area where this band played, and they were like a cover band that played mostly 80s rock, but 70s rock, and I like everything from Led Zeppelin to Michael Jackson, and they would play whatever song you wrote on a note and stuck it on the stage. They'd just pick it up and start playing it. They were really good. And so we decided, let's go down and listen to the band. And so we walked over to that hotel, found a table. They hadn't started yet, so we just were sitting at the table waiting for the band to start. We're talking and just hanging out. And after about 10 minutes or so, these police walked by. It was probably like 5 or 6 police officers, and we were like, that's kind of weird. That's a lot of police just walking by. Something's probably going on. But it's just a few police. And then a few minutes later, some more police officers came by. A little bit different uniforms, so we're like, man, it's not just one like police station, it's more than one. And then a few minutes later, the SWAT guys start coming by. And there's like a whole bunch of guys in SWAT uniforms and like, you know, carrying their machine guns, and like these are the serious guys, and they go walking past us. Now, my reaction, because of who I am, my reaction is, I got to follow those guys. Like, literally, that's what I feel like. I'm like, I got to go where they're going because that's where the action is, and I want to, A, see what's going on, and B, I want to try and be the hero, right? Like, so I decided I'm going to go follow them. The other 3 were like, you're crazy, and they just let me go. And so I went and I followed this phalanx of SWAT members walking through the hotel. And they were going towards the front entrance of the hotel. And they ran out, and as they were getting towards the front entrance, they started going a little bit faster and actually started half jogging a little bit out towards and out of the entrance. And I decided at that point, it may not be a good idea for me to go out of the hotel. Like, I'm safe right here, but I don't know which side of the danger they're running into, right? And I don't have body armor or a weapon or anything like that, so it's very unlikely that I will be the hero if I walk out that front door. So I stopped. I decided not to follow any further, and I turned around and started walking back to where my friends were and we were sitting. And as I was walking back, I was walking past this shop. You know how in the hotels they have these shops and they sell stuff? I think it was a cigar shop or a sunglasses shop or something, but just this little shop that was right there. And as I'm walking past The girl that's like in there hangs up the phone, like literally, she's talking on a landline phone, which was weird, but she hangs up the phone and runs as like she's running past me, hitting me, says, "We've got to go, get out of here, there's an active shooter." At that moment, my perspective changed a little bit, and I no longer wanted to chase the SWAT guys. I wanted to figure out, A, what's going on, and B, how do we get out of here safely? So I went back to where my friends were sitting, and I was like, "Hey guys, we got to get out of here." And so we got up and we walked. All of the police and SWAT were going towards the front of the hotel, so we decided better idea to go to the back of the hotel. So we went towards the back of the hotel and found this spot kind of behind this like big stone waterfallish thing. There was kind of like a little hallway-ish thing. So we thought, this is good because we can see anybody coming and you know, we're kind of safe here. So we stayed there. Now I'm going to tell you, it's really interesting when you're in a moment of panic, in a moment of crisis, how other people respond. Because we all respond differently. And as I sat there with these three other pastors, each one of us had different ways of responding. I wanted to solve the problem and get out safely, and like I wanted to go act, do it. There were others who were like frozen, could not do anything. They were just like wide-eyed and stuck. And there were others who were like just overwhelmed with fear and like, we just got to run. It doesn't matter where, just run, just go. We all respond to fear, panic, anxiety in different ways. But there's something common about the panic in our lives. There are a couple things that I want you to know about panic. One, you can't predict the panic. You can't predict panic in your life. We sat there at this little table. The last thing on our minds were, if you haven't figured this out yet, I was in Las Vegas when the Las Vegas shooting happened a couple years ago, and we were in the hotel that the shooter was shooting from. And so we were sitting in the lobby of that hotel, and that's what we got evacuated from. And we actually, like the rest of the night, spent the night kind of evacuating, and we didn't know all of what was going on. We didn't know at that point that this would be a national tragedy that was something that would be written in history books because of the tragedy that happened. We didn't know that. We could not have predicted that. You can't predict the panic in your lives. You can't predict the things that are coming. And also, you can't prevent the panic. You can't stop it from coming. There's nothing that you can do to keep the panic out of your lives. And when I talk about panic, remember what I'm talking about. Anxiety, fear, and unrest that comes on suddenly and keeps us stuck. You can't prevent that. It's going to happen in your life. I'm sorry if I'm the one to break this to you, but those things, storms, difficulty, challenges, fear, anxiety, and unrest will happen in your life. If they haven't yet, I want your life. That's the life that I want if you haven't experienced those things, because we're all there. So how do we deal with that? If we know that the storms will come, we know that panic will come, how do we deal with that? Well, we deal with it by exhaling panic and inhaling peace. This is how we breathe. Exhale the panic and inhale the peace. We're going to look at a story from Mark chapter 4, verses 35 through 31. Now, if you have your Bibles, open them up to Mark chapter 4. Mark is a book in the Bible that was written by this follower of Jesus, Mark. He wrote about the years of ministry that Jesus had up until his death. And Mark is, the book that he wrote is really kind of about action. Like, it's about what Jesus did instead of about what Jesus says. And so think about that as we're reading through this passage. This is all kind of about what Jesus did. Mark was all about the actions and far less about the words. But look at this with me. Mark chapter 4, verses 35 through 41. Begins at 35. That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let's go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up and rebuked the wind and said to the waves, "Quiet, peace, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." Even the wind and the waves obey him. What I love about this story is it just took 3 words. 3 words to change the entire trajectory of this moment. Peace, be still. What if those 3 words echoed in your mind every morning when you woke up? Peace, be still. What if those 3 words echoed in your mind in those moments when you feel like you're being overwhelmed and you can't handle it? Peace, be still. In those moments when your anger is welling up inside of you and you're about to sit on your child because they're being so disrespectful, peace, be still. In those moments when you feel like your marriage is going to fall apart because of this fight, that it's going to be the last one, peace, be still. I think if we could get those words, our lives would be so much less filled with panic and so much more filled with peace. If we could just capture those 3 words. So last week in our service we did this kind of breathing exercise. We did this minute where we took some time and we just said, relax and focus on your breathing. I'm going to do that again right now. Just take a moment and breathe. Take a moment and relax and focus on your breath. And think about, as we do this, these 3 words: peace, be still. Do this with me.
We are going to take a moment and release some of the worry that keeps us from true rest. We will take just 60 seconds to focus and be intentional. Put your hands on your lap or in a relaxed position and close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and fill your lungs. Let that breath out, paying attention to all the air leaving your body. Breathe deeply and slowly. Pay attention to your breath, and as you exhale, begin to exhale all of the worry. Exhale the worries about work and relationships. Exhale the worries about money or the future. Imagine all of that worry leaving you as the breath leaves your body. Now let's replace that worry with something that really deserves our focus. Let's turn our attention to how much bigger God is than all that worry. As you breathe in, remember, He created everything. Remember that He is God over everything, and He loves you.
Peace, be still. Grab hold of those words and use those words in your life when you feel like you're being overwhelmed, when you feel like the panic is coming. Because panic is not just unpredictable and unpreventable. I don't know if unpreventable is a word, but I made it up, and that's okay. It's not just unpredictable and unpreventable. Panic is also some other things that the disciples show us here. And when it comes, just say, be still. So the storms come in life, and they will. I've told you already that they will happen in your life. In this life, you will have trouble. It will be difficult for you at points in this life. And when those storms come, here's something about them. The storms are terrifying. The disciples in the boat, in that moment, were terrified. Now remember who these guys are, okay? Because most of them were fishermen. Most of them had been on boats their entire lives. Most of them have been through storms their entire lives. They've experienced most of what can happen on the sea. And they're terrified in the moment of this storm. Now think about the guys who've been in battle. The guys who've survived it all are terrified because storms are terrifying. When those challenges and difficulties and hard times come in life, it's scary. It's scary when you feel like your marriage might fall apart. It's scary when you feel like you might lose your job. It's scary when you don't know how you're going to pay your rent or your mortgage next month. These things are scary and terrifying. But also the storms are frustrating. They're super frustrating. I don't know about you, but I have felt like the disciples felt in this moment many times in my life. Many times in my life, I've felt like this. Here's what the disciples say. They go up to Jesus and they're like, this is what it says. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. I love that. Like, just a cushion. He's just sleeping on a cushion. I don't know what that exact, like, is it a bed? It's just a cushion. Jesus is in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Don't you care? Have you felt like that? Like you're going through hell on earth. God, don't you care what's happening in my life? God, don't you care at all? There's a song by Demi Lovato. I wouldn't say go listen to it necessarily because it's got the little E for explicit because she says some bad words in it. On Spotify, if you listen to it, it's explicit. But if you hear it on the radio, here's what it says. Why do I even pray? Is anybody even listening? Is anybody even listening? I've felt like that. I've felt like, man, I'm going through anxiety and fear and unrest. I'm going through these difficulties, and God, do you even care what happens in my life? I've felt like that. The disciples felt like that, and I'm guessing that you've felt like that at times too. God, do you even care? He does. He cares deeply, and He wants us to have this peace in our lives. That Jesus says to the disciples, listen, watch this. Peace, be still, and the storm goes away. He calms the storm that they're experiencing, and He calms the storm in their lives. We're supposed to exhale the panic and inhale the peace. That's how we deal with these kind of storms. It's how we deal with the anxiety, the fear, the unrest that comes on suddenly and keeps us stuck. How do we deal with that? We exhale panic and inhale peace. It's just a breath. So really, though, how do we exhale panic? I want to look at this passage, look at some things that happened here, and I think pull some kind of guidelines to how we should do that. The first, to exhale panic, you have to remember the destination. You have to remember the destination. Because, see, the story starts out here with Jesus saying this, let's go to the other side of the lake. Let's go to the other side of the lake. I want to point out something here, and I really want you to get this. So if you're scrolling through Instagram, all right, just stop for just a second. I really want you to get this. Jesus does not say, let's go to the middle of the lake and drown. Like, that's not what He says. That's not the plan that He has for the disciples or for our lives. Jesus says, let's go to the other side of the lake. He's got a plan. He's taking them somewhere. Oftentimes, we forget that God is taking us somewhere. We get so caught up in what's happening around us that we can't focus on the destination. And that's what happened with the disciples. They got so focused on the storm that was going on around them. They got so wrapped up in these waves crashing over the boat. And let's be honest. I can understand that, right? Waves are crashing over the top of the boat, filling it up, and it's about to sink. I can understand not looking towards the destination and being overwhelmed by that. But in those moments, to get rid of those things, we have to look and remember the destination. Remember that God is taking you somewhere. He doesn't mean for you to stay here and stuck. God's taking you somewhere. Second, you have to remember that you are not alone. You're not alone in these difficulties, challenges, things that you're facing. You're not alone in all of that. I love this little bit in this passage. I'm going to be honest with you. I've read through this passage a whole bunch of times, and I never really noticed this little sentence that's in here until this time as I was studying through it. Here's what it says. It comes in verse 36. It's just half a verse. It's like the second half of the verse. Just a little bit of like one line. It says this. There were also other boats with him. I'm going to be honest with you. I've always pictured this story where they're out on the ocean and nobody is around for millions of miles. Like there's nobody around. This huge storm is happening and they're the only ones that are about to drown. But here it says, right here in this passage, there were other boats with him. There were other people enduring the same storm. There were other people feeling the same waves. There were other people being overwhelmed by the same things. Too many times we feel like I have to deal with my fear. I have to deal with my anxiety. I have to deal with my unrest on my own. I have to go through this on my own. I just have to deal with this by myself. What we forget is that you're not alone. You want to get rid of the anxiety in your life? Remember that you're not alone. You want to get rid of the fear in your life? Remember that you're not alone. You want to get rid of the overwhelmed feelings, the feelings of unrest? Remember that you're not alone. You want to get rid of the panic in your life? Remember, you're not alone. You have all kinds of people doing this with you. You have friends and family. You have a church. You have pastors. All of us who are willing to walk alongside you, be the boat next to you who's helping you through this storm, who's helping you walk through all of these challenges. You're not alone. We have to remember that we're not alone. But listen, that's how we exhale the panic. We remember the destination. We remember we're not alone. But I'm just going to tell you something right now. I am not a doctor. I sometimes act like a doctor, but I'm not. I can Google stuff and become WebMD, and it's awesome, but I'm not a doctor. But I can tell you this with absolute certainty, total fact. Your lungs are not made to be empty for very long. If they're empty for too long, you will die. That's just fact. I'm just going to tell you that right now. You can take that home and put it in your cap for next week, and you can tell somebody that, and they'll be impressed, right? No, they won't, because we're not supposed to have empty lungs, right? They're supposed to have air in them. When we push all the air out, the next step is to bring air in, because when they're empty, we die. The same thing is true when we exhale these panic, these things in our life. When we get rid of all of this bad stuff, this anxiety, this unrest, all of this stuff, we can't just leave this emptiness, because you know what will happen? It will come right back. It will fill you up just exactly as it was before. So we have to not just exhale that, we have to inhale peace. Because our lives aren't meant to be just like our lungs. Our lives aren't meant to be empty. They're meant to be filled. And they're meant to be filled with this peace that Jesus brings. So how do we inhale peace? We inhale peace by these two things. One, remember who you're with. Bring in the peace in your life by remembering who you're with. The disciples forgot this. Look at what happens in Mark chapter 4, verse 38. The disciples kind of diss Jesus, and they're like, do you even care? And Jesus gets up, and he doesn't say, of course I care. He doesn't give them a lecture. He doesn't even talk to them. This is what happens. He says, he got up, he rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, peace, be still. Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. Remember who you're with. It's not just that you have other boats around. It's not just that you have other people going through the same things that can support you and encourage you and walk alongside you. It's that you're riding in the boat with the creator of the universe. I don't understand how the disciples took that long to figure this out. It seems like they should have figured it out a little bit earlier. That as the first waves crashed over the top of the boat, these guys had seen storms before. You would have thought that they would be like, ooh, this is a doozy. Let's wake up Jesus. I just said doozy. I'm not sure exactly where that came from, but it's okay. They should have thought that, right? They should have woken him up. And when they first needed him, we do the same thing. We enter into these struggles and these trials and these difficulties, and we know they're coming, and we forget who we're riding with. We forget that the guy who controls everything is right there with us. So remember who you're with. Secondly, remember this: God has a plan. God has a plan for your life. Remember that. See, the disciples, Jesus, after talking to the wind and the waves, calming it down, I'm sure the disciples were like, man, that was crazy, and now we feel like kind of losers because we knew he could do that, and he did. And here's what Jesus says to him: why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? See, look, the disciples had been with Jesus for a long time. They had been walking with him and seen him do all of these miracles, and they had been hearing him say, there's a plan. They just a few minutes ago heard him say, let's go to the other side of the lake. They know he's been talking about all of these things. He's been training them. He's been saying, we're going to go here and do this and do that, and later on, this is going to happen. Jesus has been saying all of this time, and then he says to them, do you still not believe? Look at all of the things that I've done, and you still have no faith. God has a plan for your life. But most of the time, it's not just that we don't remember it, it's that we don't believe it. We don't believe that God has a plan for my life, for your life. I want to give you a very sure, certain, very easy test to see if God has a plan for your life. A lot of people ask, like, how do I know? How do I know if God has a plan for my life and all of that kind of thing? I'm going to give you a way to know for sure if God has a plan for your life. Everybody raise your hand with me. Come on, it's easy. I'm not going to make you do anything. Nobody's going to volunteer. Okay, take your hand and put it in front of your mouth like this, or your face. Put it right there, and then blow. You feel that? If you felt that, God has a plan for your life. That's the test. If you are breathing, God has a plan for your life. If you are alive, God has a plan for your life. He's not in the business of not using the people that follow him. He's not in the business of wasting opportunities. You see, you're going through and have gone through the struggles and the difficulties and the challenges of life so that you can help somebody else through them. You're going through these storms so that somebody else, you can be the boat alongside them and take them through the storm as well. God has a plan for your life. It's interesting to me that the disciples don't see that far ahead, that they think we're going to die. It's interesting because they've seen Jesus do all of these miracles. They've seen him heal blind men and feed thousands of people with just a couple of pieces of bread and some fish. And they've seen all of this, and they think we're going to die. In fact, they think, do you even care? And here's what I think. This guy, Jesus, who they walk up to and say, do you even care? Imagine his feelings. Because he knew at that moment, in a little while, I'll have nails pounded through my wrists to show you how much I care. In just a while, I'll hang on a cross and die, not to tell you I care, to show you how much I care. If you're going through these struggles and you feel like, God, do you even care? If you've been through those struggles and you've felt like, God, do you even care? Be assured of this. God doesn't just say he cares. God demonstrated that through his son Jesus. That he has a plan for our lives and that he cares so deeply about making that happen in our lives, he would give his son to die for us. That's the kind of guy you're riding in the boat with. That's the kind of guy you're facing panic with and who brings peace to your life. Will you pray with me? God, we thank you so much for the way that you bring peace, the way that you remind us of who you are. The way that you remind us of your grace and your mercy and your sacrifice. God, we thank you for those moments when we feel overwhelmed. And you come into our lives and you just speak these words, peace, be still. God, we pray in this moment that we would allow those words to echo in our heart. God, allow us to hear and understand your voice saying, peace, be still. And whatever challenges or fights or frustrations or anger or worry or jealousy or pride that we brought into this place, God, I pray that you would just overwhelm all of that with these words, peace, be still. And remind us of how you brought peace to our life through the sacrifice of your Son, Jesus. We pray in his name.